Tanorria Askew, thank you so much for being here on Head on Fire. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be speaking with you. So, for folks that are not familiar with you or your platform, tell people a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I have kind of created my dream job, although I do not dream to work, in that I help determine or help bridge the intersection between food and social justice. I am a personal chef. I bring the restaurant to people's homes. But in my corporate career, the thing that got me out of bed every day was diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I use food as a bridge builder for social justice and challenging conversations about race and gender and sexuality, and the list goes on.
And you have a fabulous podcast that you use to bring some of those topics to the masses.
Yes. Black Girls Eating is my love project, and I'm sure my co-host Candace would say the same thing. It is a conversation about justice, sisterhood, and well-seasoned food, and we amplify voices of color, and it is so fun, so fun.
Did you? I got to interview the phenomenal Dr. Psyche Williams-Forson last fall. Have you read her book?
I have not read her book, but
Eating While Black. I want to say it is phenomenal.
Fantastic. I'm a fan. It's on my list, and I am super jealous you have that opportunity. Wow.
I know. I couldn't believe she said yes, but she did. And then we had a fantastic conversation. It's fantastic. I was so great. Anyways, but you're here and I'm having a fantastic conversation with you and I'm so excited. So I want to dive in because as cool as all of those other topics are, we kind of met because I shared a story, like a horror story of my own DEI experience. And I've been in a number of corporate positions over my career because we all have day jobs, yay. Yep. And I have been lucky enough to, in previous positions, be a person with influence that had the ability to kind of change some policies, some procedures, some representation stuff. I don't currently have that in my current role. And so I had shared a story about how in my day job, we'd had an HR representative give a diversity, equity, inclusion training and basically say that she understood, she as a cisgender heterosexual white lady understood what it was like to be excluded from society because she was a middle child. And that was
what
the best.
What a comparison.
It's a fantastic, yep. Yeah. And it went a little viral. So I wanted to ask you what is diversity, equity, and inclusion in that day job corporate sense? Not just what those terms mean, but what is that training? What is that?
Yes. So this is such a great question. I consult with small businesses and nonprofits on helping them determine the gaps on why their workplace is not inclusive or how it could be more inclusive. And I always say two like hardcore things I say. Number one, I have a rule of thirds. There are a third of people who are change agents who are on fire to do the DEI work. There's a third of people who are curious. Maybe they think they're allies, but they're not just yet. They don't have the tools, but they're open. Then there are a third of people who do not care. And those are not my people. Those are not the people I'm going to spend my time and energy on. So that's always the first thing I say anytime I talk about DEI. And that's just to say, throw whatever you have at me. I can handle it because I'm not going to navigate the people who don't care. Or maybe I plant a seed with them and that's great, but I'm not here to change their minds. And so DEI to me, the diversity component it's the education piece. It's the part where we're learning different things. It's me being aware that there are differences around us. But that's it. That's where it stops. Because you don't have to do anything with that knowledge. It's like, I'm aware that you have a different skin color. I'm aware that you have a different faith. Pause. Period. Then the inclusion component is saying that I am going to invite people to the table, but that's all I'm doing. And that's a problem. So inclusion is saying, yeah, I'm going to invite people to the table. I recognize that my table's not very diverse. I have learned these things about these other people, so I want to give them a seat at the table. But the E part, the equity part is actually saying, and I'm going to give them a fair shot to actually make a difference at the table. I'm going to give them the tools, the resources, the capacity to actually show up fully as their authentic self and actually contribute. And if their contributions are different than mine, I'm going to seek to understand. I'm not going to put a wall up and say I'm not interested in what you have to say, or I'm also not going to I'm going to assist in knocking down any barriers that you might feel like are in your way from actually contributing. So I don't want to just sit at the table. I have a voice and I want you to hear it. And I don't need your help in giving me a voice. I have a voice. You don't have to give me one, but
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that you're going to sit down, pause, be quiet, and give me an opportunity to speak.
It sounds like DEI, and from my experience, that the idealized version of DEI is to make corporations to ask corporations to imagine a world in which their makeup reflects the world around us as it exists, and invites the idea that those people know themselves well enough
Yes.
to write the policy that they have to follow, that they are operating under, write the policies and procedures, have a voice in what that looks like to create a workplace that is safe for everyone, that includes everyone, and where it's just like, the idea of inequity is just not a thing that I have to experience where I work.
Right. Right.
Which does not, to me, sound like this radical idea, but for other people, it's this horrible token of wokeism or something like that, whatever that means today.
Yeah, even the term woke. I don't get me on a tangent about woke.
I mean,
All day. I literally will be here all day. Yeah, I recently told an audience of people that woke is a term that was coined by the Black community and that it is now highly misused. So to actually say that you're concerned about someone being woke or actually saying I'm trying to become woke, guess what? It's not yours. So you will never be woke. It doesn't belong to you. So, bleh, yep. We could be there all day. But what you said about, putting policy into place, making changes, the biggest issue is that the people who are responsible for making the policy, usually the people who are high up, they are the ones who don't want to make policy and really put that into like firm, established, this is the way the workplace is going to be, because that means they have to get uncomfortable. They have to make sacrifices. And so let's just do the bare minimum. Let's just make it, say we're doing something so that it's even performative to satisfy or to pacify the people who really want it, because we don't want to become uncomfortable or put ourselves out to create actual policy change.
May I give an example from my own life?
Yes.
So I used to work for a really big company, and as we were coming up to Pride Month, I had joined the company's LGBTQIA plus, group. Everybody has those, or at least some of the bigger ones that want to appear like they're with it, have them. And I joined it, and I was getting ready kind of for my first big Pride Month with the company. I was with them for many years, and they're big. Their big, there's stuff all throughout Pride Month, but their big day was like this big, like corporate wide day of like discussing what it means to be LGBTQ in the workplace, and specifically in our workplace, and what are some of the challenges, and how is the company working to overcome those challenges and make it a more DEI friendly place, especially for queer folks. And how they planned on doing that was how they had been planning on doing that for all of the years previously. And what it involved was a cisgender heterosexual white man who I think was north of 60 and made about 100 times more a year than all of the rest of us, was going to fly in from New York and was going to give a presentation on the importance of being an ally in the workplace. And I raised my hand and I said, "Hi, I know I'm new here, but follow me here."
Yes.
What if at this big, big company that we have, what if the queer folks were allowed to speak for themselves? Wild idea. Wild idea. What if instead of the cisgender heterosexual white president of the what if he, instead of him coming in and telling us what it's like to be queer in the workplace, what if we sat him down and
Yes.
and the bosses in the audience, and we got up on stage and there was a panel of us,
Yes.
and and it was mostly queer people of color,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and we made sure that there was trans representation and non-binary like
Mm-hmm.
what if that was a panel of people and we told them what it was like to work in the workplace that they had created for us and what we needed them to do differently. What if that was what we did
Because that
instead?
ally, I'm sure, probably read one book about allyship or listened to one podcast, and now they're an expert.
He's doing some Malcolm Gladwell something. And so they were like, oh, wow, we hadn't thought of that before. So we did it and we had the highest turnout ever. And everybody was
Yes, you
like, oh my
did.
gosh. Yeah. And like sudden, I mean, and then things start. I mean, I don't know that there was like some radical change, and I don't work for the
Sure.
company anymore, so I can't speak to
Sure.
what's happened. But I know that things at least started changing a little bit here and there. I mean, I noticed immediate changes, like they stopped ordering Chick-fil-A for lunches because sometimes
Okay.
they would do like they would buy everybody lunch
Right.
and it would come from someplace like Chick-fil-A, and they
Uh-huh.
immediately stopped doing that. And it was just little things over and over again. But I did notice that they started making some change
Make
and
an
asking
effort.
us to lead discussions instead of the other way around. And I was just like, why is that? Why? And I always remember, when I'm in those rooms now, and I'm in them less and less because my day job, because of my other things,
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thing and books and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, being an author,
Mm-hmm.
those take up more of my time now. So I don't choose to be in those kinds of positions in my day
Right.
job. But when I am in those rooms, my mother always told me when I was kind of growing up, she's like, remember this lesson now, because one day you're going to be in that room and you're going to be making those decisions. And you need
Absolutely.
to remember all of the people that are not in that room.
Yes. Yes. It only takes one person to kind of make it a significant impact, but it can have a lasting effect. That recommendation that you made, it should change how they approach Pride Month every year moving forward. Hopefully.
So I usually think of this type of content, DEI, in the context of corporate training modules.
Yes.
How did this type of training get wrapped up in corporate lingo?
A lot of it is usually reactionary. A lot of
Mm.
companies end up getting in trouble for something, whether it's a disgruntled exit interview from an employee.
Slap a DEI band-aid on it.
Yes, yes. Whether it
We
is
we did
something.
a sexual harassment, and now we all have to sign a form saying we took sexual
Yes,
harassment training. Okay.
yes,
Yep.
and that is why you will not find me creating these off the shelf courses that people can
Mm-hmm.
take. Like when people come to me and say, I want DEI consultation from you, or what do you have to offer? We are going to have at least 3 conversations before I tell you what you need, number one. And then number two, there's going to be a list of recommendations, and none of them is just going to say, you need to do this one time thing with me and everything will be fixed. Because most often, just like sexual harassment training or any other compliance training, companies want to just check it off the list. And that gets companies in so much trouble because the moment they put it out there and they check it off, you have all of these employees saying, okay, what's next? That was a great introduction, but what's next? Or you have these employees who are on fire and their fire gets diminished because there's nothing left. Or what I've also recognized a lot recently is you have these companies who are like, yes, DEI is important to us. There's no one to manage it. Then you have employees kind of haphazardly creating these diversity councils and creating these employee resource groups. There's no one to manage it. There's no budget for it. There's no one to report to help them actually make recommendation and make impact. So then they approach third parties, people like yourself or myself, to come and speak. And their budget's $500 for Black History Month or for Pride Month. And you're like, wait, what?
Why was I paid $500 to go speak at a college about pride?
And I feel awful because you have these employees. They are typically mid-level employees who are super excited. They feel like it's a great notch in their resume, a way to make impact. And you have to tell them no. You have to tell them that you're slightly insulted and they're terrified to go take it back to their manager. But it's also because their manager is just giving them a pacifier saying, yeah, sure, you can have $500 to go hire someone to talk about whatever month. But saying, here's
plus a pizza budget. We did get pizza. It wasn't good,
yes,
but it was a pizza budget.
Yes, you're going to get pizza party because pizza solves everything. You want to celebrate that you hit quota for the quarter? Pizza. You want to celebrate any history month? Pizza.
Any history month.
Yes.
It's and Arbor Day. Have some pizza.
It's not even like quality brick oven pizza, okay?
No. Why is it always Papa John's too? Like there isn't even a Papa, like they will build a Papa John's somewhere just to provide corporate training pizza.
Yes.
So do you think that corporations are the best stewards of this kind of information? And I ask that probably knowing the question, and it's probably leading the witness. I do apologize, but I think of how many important, essential things that we need access to, that we should know, that we should learn, that corporations seem to be the only inroad to. And this could be a much bigger conversation. I don't want to go down all of those roads, but things like health insurance, the gatekeeper there is a job, and usually a good job. Like a good job with a big company. But DEI training is not something, that we have in schools necessarily, nor could I think of a way to incorporate it in a way that doesn't violate some new law somewhere. I mean, there's just all of these kind of essential trainings that we are tasking corporations with being the stewards of. And like you said, they end up being reactionary. We put this policy in place, or we put this service in place because it wasn't there and we got in some trouble. So now we offer it. So from your experience, are corporations the best stewards of providing this information? Because like you said, it does feel oftentimes, even in my own life, like this is just a box somebody's checking off.
Right. I've seen it start out in universities. I have quite a few friends in higher ed, specifically in the medical field, and they're having lots of conversations about healthcare in underrepresented areas and the disparities for proper healthcare, believing Black women when they say they're experiencing pain. And so I know it's talked about, but it's not until you get to corporations where you do get that one mandatory check mark, where it's mandatory. Everywhere else, it's optional. Even if I think about churches, I've consulted with some churches who have come in and said, we want to be more inclusive. And I have challenged them hard.
Really?
I've challenged them hard. And, whether or not it's sustained is the big question. But people can leave the church if they're not happy with that, right? Or they just check out.
I'm so curious about what kind of church is asking for DEI training. That just, I grew up in a really conservative area of East Texas, so church and DEI doesn't sound like it marries well to me.
Yeah, churches who call themselves multicultural but really don't have a clue.
Oh, like a UU situation kind of thing?
It's reactionary, yes. Oh. Someone in the church, they piss them off, and now all of a sudden they want to care. George Floyd gets murdered, and now you have half the congregation who's hurt and half the congregation who's clueless. And so, okay, how do we bridge this? How do we do it under God? And it's like, whoa, okay. And that's why I say sustainability is always questionable. But, even when you do it with that, you say, okay, all the church leaders, I want all the church leaders to go through this DEI training. Well, typically church leaders are voluntary. Right? Most churches aren't good at paying people. And so it turns out
they're good at paying the pastor, though.
Right? And so it turns out that because they're voluntary leaders, they get to choose if they want to show up to this DEI training. So it's that workplace environment where you see it becoming mandatory. Everywhere else is totally optional.
How well do you think they handle creating environments that are actually diverse, inclusive, and equitable? Like how I mean, obviously, like you said, a lot of this is reactionary. what's your percentage on, okay, so you leave, do you check back in 6 months, a year later, like
Yeah.
did they learn any lessons, did are
Yeah.
some of these workplaces better for having
Yeah.
done this?
I feel like what I've witnessed the most is employees are empowered to hold leadership accountable.
But are they, like, who's on the employee side? Because ostensibly it's supposed to be HR, but I've never met an HR rep that felt like they were on my side.
Don't get me started.
Mm.
That is one of my biggest challenges right
like
now.
who, like, okay, so other than ponying up the money to go hire like an employment attorney,
Yeah,
who is actually on the employee's side if they have a legitimate grievance?
employees.
Or if it's just like, hey, the vibe here is very cis het white,
Yeah, yeah.
affluent.
Mm-hmm.
I feel terrified to speak up for
Mm-hmm.
anything at all. I feel
Yes.
terrified to say no to
Yes.
things. I feel terrified to. Who's on that person's side?
The other employees.
Yeah, I suppose.
Survey data.
Mm.
Sometimes if there is structure with DEI efforts within the organization, sometimes the executive sponsor for the
Really? That's
council.
good.
I've had some experiences with executive sponsors where they were the ones who made things happen. They were the ones who said, no, this isn't optional, this is mandatory. But oftentimes it is an uphill battle. It really, every council that I work with, this is a marathon, not a sprint. We're going to celebrate every single win, even the small ones, because it's going to feel like you never get a big win. But
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
I also can walk away from consulting with an organization saying to the people, to that top third of people who are change agents, saying, know your lane, know where you can make impact. I say that as a consultant, I am not here to fix your organization. I hope that when I walk away, you can maintain the things that I've helped you implement, but that's not even my job. It's up to you. And that is what helps me continue to do my job, is to know that I have given you the tools and resources. It is up to you to implement them, to help them create policy, to make change. And if you are not sustaining it, you probably are going to call me back in a year, or you're going to be mad at me, but I can't take responsibility for that.
Yeah, I will say, just from personal experience, the bigger the company, it feels like the better supported the DEI, the various employee programs that are meant to help organize various minority and oppressed groups inside of the company. It feels like the more that those are supported, at least, because they make enough money and are evil enough that they can afford to throw money behind those things, because it feels like it gives them a veneer of, we're still good.
Yes. And I would say that, thinking back to your question on how are those employees supported, it is the organizations that have chief diversity officers, directors of diversity. And oftentimes those are, when we think about the big layoffs that are taking place, those are usually some of the first positions to go. But if you have those roles and you are sustaining those roles, those are the ones that are making the most significant impact. And I'm over here helping small businesses and nonprofits realize that they need those roles. That is a challenge. Like, oh, it's we got the council, they could do it. Can they though? Because a lot of people on the council don't even have a leadership position within the organization. And you're expecting them to help create change for the entire organization? They're learning leadership skills while being on the council.
The most passionate participants in these programs tends to be just kind of everyday, like, frontline workers. I mean, the everyday hourly employees that are just kind of, one, passionate because they still have the idea that if they get involved, they can make change.
Yes.
And I know that sounds like I'm saying it in a jaded way, and I probably am, because once you do it a little bit more, you get a few rungs up on the ladder, you're like, it's not going to change as much as you need it to. No.
Not as much. But the people who keep doing it are the ones who look at the tiny wins and take that.
Yes, there
And
are there are tiny wins. There
the
are tiny
burnout is
wins, and
real.
hopefully over time. I don't know. I think I've just become a really jaded homosexual this year. Seeing there's a lot of folks. I guess I've just got a lot of big feelings in the last few days with all of the legislation that's come out in a few places like Tennessee, places like Florida,
My
you know,
state,
just yeah,
my state, Indiana, with protecting
mm-hmm,
trans youth. Like, come
yeah, and just I'm not going to get emotional, but just I don't. There are adults, fully grown adults who can vote, and I think probably who did vote in the last election,
on.
who have never been an adult in a world where same-sex marriage was not the law of the land,
Yes.
and they don't remember why Hillary Duff was making commercials that was like, do you know what you say when you say that's so gay? Like, I think there's a whole heck of a lot of people that do not realize how recent Obergefell was
Yeah.
and how homophobic everything everywhere all the time used to be. Everywhere all the time.
But people
Every
were so
punchline of every joke in every sitcom was homophobic. And we were just told to just suck it
deal with
up, and
it.
people were dying like crazy, and they still are, but it's okay because same-sex marriage is the law of the land, right? So it fixed
Yes.
everything. It's sort of like we elected Barack Obama, so racism can't
Right.
exist.
Yep. Some of my favorite
And
TV shows I look back on and I'm like, whoa.
I just don't think that people quite realize how recent it is
Yes.
because they didn't experience that world. And I'm like, I am only 36.
Mhm.
And that feels like yesterday. I mean, it just
Mhm.
feels like, and what's weird is that, I'll share like, hey, my husband and I are about to celebrate 17 years together in May. Yeah, I know. And I'm old. And
Congratulations.
thank you. Um, and sometimes when I share those kinds of things, it's like, oh gosh, you guys have been married, for how long? I'm like, oh no, we couldn't get married,
Yeah.
and it just feels like I don't feel like people, even when I say it, they don't absorb that impact. Like I
Right.
couldn't get married, and I
Right.
just don't think people realize like how recent all of that is, and how necessary this kind of work is, and how much it sucks that this
Mhm.
work ends up just being a box
Yeah.
that corporations check, and the fact that it's owned by corporations
Yeah. Yeah.
who don't end
I,
up translating it into, like, if they really cared, if it was more than just a box, then I mean, these big corporations they've got a lot of money in Washington. They're lobbying politicians for advantageous laws. We saw what happened with Disney in Florida. If they
yes.
really want to throw their weight around, they can.
Yes.
And
That's
it
another
just
thing is like,
sucks to see that they don't.
yes, I feel like our generation, the younger generation, that they are paying a little bit more attention to
I hope so.
where are these corporations' dollars going. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I even think about deciding what brand of shoes to buy. It's more about brand loyalty now than it is about like, oh, I want this brand because it feels expensive.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's more like I've done some research and I want to know what efforts has this brand done to be, economically friendly, to be eco-friendly, to support LGBT right, all of those things. It That's why companies are talking about it more. Is
Mm-hmm.
because people are looking for it more. And I think that that will be a consistent pattern eventually. But
I
I have
hope
to tell
so.
you, my one of the things that keeps me doing this work is I firmly believe that we will not see complete inclusion in our lifetime. We will not see it. But
Especially not with the way that I mean, you can't
mhm,
have
mhm,
a super majority in the Supreme Court the
yeah,
way that it currently is,
yes,
and think that we are going to live in an equitable society. You just
mhm.
can't.
I hope that my 3-year-old niece's grandchildren see it. That's the
I
goal I'm
have,
shooting
yeah,
for.
I have nieces, that preschool, grade
Mhm,
school age, and I just
mhm.
kind of hope that I hope that they grow up in a world that's better than the world that I had. And I
Yes.
hope that their kids, if they have kids, or whoever that they love and care
Mhm.
for that's young, I hope that those kids live in a better world than they get to live in.
Yes.
And I hope it's better. But it just is so disheartening to see that just the minuscule amount of change that was made in my 20s
Yes.
just feels like it's already
Backward.
backslidden.
There,
Yeah.
there is absolutely a sense of taking steps back. And yeah, yeah.
So what can those of us that are not in the corporate world learn from this training? And is there a way that we could access it if we want to go through it? I mean, and
Yeah.
is there a way that we could get this? And what are ways that we can implement it that are outside of a corporate setting?
Yeah. So I offer a course specifically that's oh my gosh, what's the name of my course?
Is it let me I was gonna say let me ask you about DEI, but it's not. It wouldn't be ask you. It'd be ask me.
That would be so cute.
Thank you.
Oh my
That'll be
gosh.
$7,000. Thank you. This was a brand consultation, Tenoria.
I
Actually,
appreciate
that's all
that.
this was
Hey,
just a brand
I can always use
consultation.
that help, right? It's called Anti-Racist Journey, and it's a check-in on your journey towards inclusivity and anti-racism. And the reason why I call it a journey is because it's never going to stop. We have to always be learning. Even I'm learning. And the thing that I remind people of is that we are all unlearning and relearning history together. If we don't
Mm.
have anything else in common, that's one thing that we are all doing. And so, anyone can sign up for that on my website. There are plenty of resources, credible resources, where you can take these courses and you can learn more about what corporations specifically are learning. A lot of times these are off the shelf courses through different universities, through different learning management tools. A lot of them are free. And I just say that if you're not in the corporate space and you are absorbing this information, ask your friends and family in the corporate space what are their corporations are doing, because it really does start to get people thinking
Mhm.
about the place they work. Is the place that they work inclusive? And also think about where you're spending your dollars, because that makes a huge difference. Number one, you're putting money back into the pockets of people of color, people of the LGBT community, women, and supporting them. A lot of people who are doing this work, creating these courses, are people who have the lived experience. It's people who have suffered like ourselves. And so take those courses, even if you aren't doing it for a corporation standpoint, maybe you're doing it for your own learning. And it really does help you become a bridge builder, because
Mhm.
oftentimes I feel like people don't have these conversations in their friend circle unless an instance forces them to. But when you
Mhm.
are taking these courses, you're reading these books, you're listening to these podcasts, it's going to make you more inquisitive among your friends, among your family, and create some kind of conversation. And most importantly, it's going to equip you to be able
Mhm.
to have those conversations, because the question I get the most is, well, what happens if I say the wrong thing? You pick yourself up, you apologize for it, you learn from it, and you keep going. And by
Mhm.
gleaning this information, completing these courses, sitting at the feet of people like myself, you are going to be better equipped on when you do say the wrong thing. Because guess what? You are going to say the wrong thing.
Mhm.
I have a client now that the all of the people they serve, I'm working with their board. The entire group of people that they serve are blind, and about 70% of those people also have additional disabilities. And I have had to learn so much about ableism, and I have said the wrong thing, but guess what? They have kept me on as their consultant, because we are learning and we are shaping and we are growing and we are building and we are making impact together. And if it weren't for me going and reading these books and taking some of these courses myself, I am better able to have these conversations with these people.
But being able to model what accountability looks like
Yes.
that's an
Yes.
important lesson in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And modeling the fact that, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good,
Yeah.
and that we could
Oh,
all be doing good.
yes.
Um, what do you, speaking of good and bad, what do you do if you're getting bad DEI training? What do you do? What do you
Yes.
do if your HR perhaps experience with diversity, equity, inclusion as being a middle child?
I am a firm believer of calling in and calling out. I am not opposed to calling out. And so I say, give an opportunity to call in and, pull that HR person to the side, send them an email, ask your manager if you're not in a position to have that conversation, share it with the DEI council, someone in the organization. And if they do another training where it's really bad, do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And after about 2 or 3 times, yo, this is a problem. And you can call out. I feel like calling out is only negative when both parties haven't learned from it.
I
So,
spoke to the disability advocate Ola Ojewumi
mhm, mhm.
last year, a few
I
months
got to hear
ago.
her speak last year.
She's
I
phenomenal. She's
know.
such a phenomenal,
Yeah.
and makes me feel like I have done absolutely nothing
I
with my
know,
life.
right?
It's like Malala. Like when you see Malala's like resume, I'm just like, oh, okay,
And I was like fangirling
I'm a
her
piece
like
of
10,
shit.
15 years ago. So
Mhm.
even then, it was like, look
Yep.
at your resume. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm a piece of shit. So, but but we talked about the difference between calling in and calling out. And calling in, for people that might be a new term for,
Mhm.
it tends to be a more of a private conversation with
Yes.
somebody who you believe, or you've either experienced them acting in good faith,
Mhm.
or you are assuming that they are coming to the table in good faith. And so this is the opportunity to have maybe a more private
Yes.
conversation where we're
Yes.
creating a dialogue and saying, hey, this wasn't great. This would be the way that I would hope that you'd see it. Here's some resources. Here's how to learn. Let's learn together.
Right.
And then if that doesn't work, if if we go from ignorant to stupid,
Yes.
that's when we call out and we make it
Yes.
everybody's problem.
Yes, absolutely. You call in a couple times, give them grace. Go in with a posture of openness and a posture of trying to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't work, you call out as loud as you can. Okay. I'm not opposed to both. I think both have their place.
Have you, and I think I asked this, but I want to kind of circle back to it. Circle back. We're using our corporate lingo here. Have you seen, gonna circle back? If we could just if we could have a dialogue about, have you seen any improvements in corporations or working conditions directly because of this work?
Yes, I've seen organizations make trans benefits a priority or
Fantastic.
to offer something. I have seen policy change on basically no tolerance for racism, no tolerance for hate speech, and different things like that. People have changed their policies to address, here's what's going to happen if you do this. We're not accepting it. You're out. Whereas, there used to be, let's have an investigation and get both parties involved. And now it's like, nope. And I really think that is helping reduce how much employees are gaslit when they're expressing problems and concerns. So I have seen change there. And I have seen change where things have been mandatory versus optional. That's usually
Mhm.
like the small little nugget of change, as well as typically with the feedback. That's kind of one of my favorite things is I like the feedback and the dialogue. Yes, I'm going to come in, I'm going to train you, and you're going to get the ABCs and XYZs of diversity, of racism, of all of, microaggressions and all of those things. But then when we start having the dialogue, that's when you're really seeing where employees' heads and hearts are. That's where you see where their challenges are, where their questions are. And those are usually open to anyone and everyone. And even this last workshop that I did, I told the council, because it was addressing the entire organization versus, you know, a group of only 50 people. Usually we bite it off in bits and pieces. And I told the council, I said, hey, if it goes radio silent during Q&A, I need someone to chime in with just a very general question. That was not necessary. People were ready. They were ready to ask questions. And hearing the questions that they're asking, if leadership is not listening to those questions and learning from them, if you're not looking at the survey data about the feedback from that training and learning from it, that is usually what helps it not just be a one-time training that you check off a list, is because people are saying, okay, great, we have this training, what's next? Can we have a training on this next? And they're starting to say, yes, we can have more training come in. And so it definitely goes beyond training. Training is just a part of it. It really is about complete change and structural change within the organization. But just to have someone come in and say, we're going to do DEI training because, you know, there was another Black person murdered by the hands of police, or we just read in the news about how a trans person has been beaten and brutalized and brutalized. Is that a word? It's not.
Brutalized.
Thank you. And so we're going to have this training because, you know, everyone seems to be talking about it. Doing that is crap, in my opinion. Just doing that and that being the end of it. But
a whole heck of a lot of companies suddenly cared about DEI
yes.
After George Floyd.
Yes, absolutely.
Whole heck of a lot of them.
Yes.
A whole lot of media companies started promoting specifically Black people after George Floyd. A whole heck of a lot of meetings and training were done. But they're not still doing it.
And I say, all the people that posted that precious little black box in June
that black square.
What are you done now?
But the problem, I mean, I remember being on social media just a couple of years ago, and if you didn't have a black box,
you got called out.
You were run through the ringer in your comment section on all of your other posts until you did put a black box and you changed your link in bio to be one of those cards with the links to the resources so that you could say you did a black box. Because if you didn't, you were run through the ringer. But if you did do a black box, and it's like, oh, you did a black box. Did you? Do you feel better? Is racism solved now?
Right. But I also love going back on the companies that are getting this all wrong. And it's super performative now in 2023.
Yes.
I'm going back to the Instagram to see what did you post in 2021? How many dollars did you donate? Because I'm gonna use that to hold you accountable. I'm gonna say, oh, so you posted that black box. Can you give me a list of all the things that you've done since then? The policies that you've changed? Can we use some new employee survey data to see if that black box actually had an impact?
I would love to see some of these employee survey data. I would love to see it. And I'm not, and what I want listeners who might start cluing in, oh, maybe I will go, maybe I am curious about where this money is going. What I also want you to look at is, where does all their money go?
Oh, totally.
So did they donate to a Black charity? Did they donate to a queer cause? Did they donate to a disabled cause? But then did they turn around and vote for that conservative politician who is also voting against trans kids in their state? Did they play both sides of the fence here? Did they stop doing something bad and start doing something good? Or did they just do a good thing to offset the many bad things?
Yes. And even with the money donation, a lot of these companies who came out in 2020 and donated $1 million, that did not faze them. That was like donating a penny, literally.
I think every year about how, and this is a lot of people's problem with the corporatization of pride, about how much money Target probably makes. Target's one of the few, listen, there's a good and bad thing here. Target's one of the few places that you can walk into in a lot of places around the country and see a pride display. And if you want some queer pride, specifically pride merch, you can go to Target, which is accessible to a lot more people than your average queer indie clothing store or bookstore or something like that. Like, I have access to queer owned and operated indie stores, because I have access to Chicago right down the road.
Right. Right.
But a lot of people don't have that in smaller venues. So Target is accessible to them. And that's great. And I remember being in that small town and but what Target does is they give a very tiny, very, very tax advantageous one-time donation to a single queer cause. Like they give like $100,000 or something.
Mhm.
And then all the money that they make off that Pride merch, they just keep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know that, and I could be wrong, and I am not sitting here in front of Google, and I'm not looking it up right now in this moment, but I've looked it up before, and I don't ever remember them telling us how much they make off of that merch.
No, I don't know that I've seen
And they
it.
do the same thing in February with Black History Month.
Oh, yeah.
They do the same thing with Women's History. They do the same thing. They'll give like a one-time, and with as much money as Targets make,
That
I mean, $100,000 might be
one way
what
of
a store
feeling.
made in the first hour on Black
Yes.
Friday.
Yes.
Like a single store, like
Yes.
one store in a rural community might make $100,000 in their first hour on a Black Friday. Like that's nothing to Target. And you see these big corporations. So if you take something away from this and you think, oh, I do want to start following the money and see, because corporations talk with their money.
Yeah.
Corporations talk with their money.
One thing that Target does get right is they give opportunity in their store to Black creators, to LGBTQ creators.
They do.
Whereas I look at companies like Bath and Body Works is my favorite example. Because after 2020, during Black History Month, and maybe also during Juneteenth, they came out with these Black History Month candles. It was their exact same scents. They did not reach out to another candle curator and say, let's partner. They just slapped some Ankara African print on a candle and tried to make a sale from it. I look at the clothing store New York and Company and Lane Bryant. They're all under the same umbrella. And they came out with cute Pride. Like, I didn't even realize that I had bought a pair of Pride underwear. I was like, oh, it's a rainbow. It wasn't even the right rainbow. That's why I didn't know it was Pride. But they put it out in June, so therefore it's Pride. Right?
Oh yeah, I've worked retail, and I know that they just go around the store. This red, this yellow, this green, this blue, and they'll just stick it up front.
Yes.
And I'm like,
did you reach out to a queer designer?
No, they did not. No, they did not.
Them to partner?
Mm-mm. They put a rainbow window up, and then I remember in that same month, my district manager came in and made me move 2 mannequins because there were 2 male mannequins, because these mannequins have genders. They were too close together.
Stop it right now.
She squared up, looked at me, and she's, oh, we're not promoting that. Yeah. She had me move them a little bit further apart so they looked like friends. These mannequins that have penises, I guess, or something. Can't have these plastic things. The inanimate objects might be gay.
Oh my word.
Where do we go from here? What's given you hope in this space?
It's those entry-level, mid-level people that I work with. Those are the people I spend most of my time with. And they are still on fire. They still care. They still believe that change is possible. They are still learning and growing. They don't think that they are the experts in the room, even though the rest of the organization looks at them as the expert in the room. But I like that humility because it keeps them learning. It keeps them wanting to be fresh. And so it feels like if they can challenge executive leadership confidently, and do it and have their receipts while they're doing it, if they can utilize the terms racism and utilize the terms privilege without fear when they are challenging leadership, then I feel like I'm doing something. Then I am helping support the goal that I was hired to do. Um yeah, it's those individuals that keep me on fire.
Tanorria, I would like to ask you about about I'd like to ask you about another very serious topic. What's
Yeah.
it like on MasterChef?
Oh, Gordon Ramsay is super dreamy.
Is he?
Yeah, I mean, he's like super intense and he's very wrinkly, but um, it's like when he's staring at you with those like ocean blue eyes and he's yelling at you, you're like, you just keep yelling. You just come right here and look at me and keep yelling. And it is, I say it's like adult day camp prison because you're sequestered, you don't get your cell phone, you don't get to drive or call an Uber. You are with the same people for up to 2.5 to 3 months. And you don't, the only thing,
Really?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And the only thing you know every single day is what time to get up and what to wear. And that's because someone has told you. Everything else is a surprise. So you have to have a very level head to compete, because if you get in your own way and you get in your own head, it can get the best of you because you're questioning everything all the time. So when you start questioning yourself, oh boy, it's not a good game to play.
I love talking to chefs and food creators and stuff because it's just a language that I admire. I love to cook. I love to bake. I love to do that. But I don't get to be quite as adventurous as I'd like to be. But what's your perfect meal?
Oh, I love this question because actually on during MasterChef, it was very early into us being in LA. So they flew us out as the top 80. And within 2 weeks, they cut us to 40. And that's when you start seeing us on TV. And so during that top 80, there wasn't a lot of cameras rolling. They were really kind of figuring out everyone's dynamic. And there was a time that they let us go to the beach, and we were in this 15-passenger white van, and we were all in the van headed to the beach, and we
And
started.
there were 20 people in that 15 passenger.
You better believe it. You better believe it. And we were all asking people like the same question you just asked, and it was so fascinating to be asked that question among other food creatives and just hear people
Uh-huh.
talk about it. And so my answer is still the same. My ultimate meal is my mama's pot roast and her mac and
Mm.
cheese.
Mm.
No one makes it like her. Her mac and cheese recipe is in my cookbook, and it no matter who follows the recipe and makes it, it's still not going to be my mom's. But my mom's mac and cheese and pot roast, and it would be my collard greens and my fried okra, my grandmother's sweet potato pie, and I had this bread pudding trio at Emerald Lagasse's restaurant in Miami. And I left one bite of bread pudding on that plate in 2006, and I still think about it to this day. To this day, it is.
Why? Why didn't you finish it, Tenoria?
I was too full. It was like the strawberry something, and it was bread pudding. And
Girl, that's when you stand up. You do a squat. You let out a burp. You do something. You gotta get right. You gotta get right with
yes,
your creator so you can get that last little
I know,
bite.
I know, and I just need like tapas portions of each. I don't need like big portions of all the things I need. I just need a little variety plate of all of those things. That and my good friend Oya Woodruff, she's a chef here locally. She has the most amazing seafood shack in Indiana, landlocked. And it would be her crab and shrimp tray. I just need like one crab leg, two shrimps, and a piece of her broccoli. I'm good.
You talk about the bread pudding that you still think about. My husband's Mexican, and we were down there for a christening a few years back, and
Yeah.
I still to this day have actual dreams in my actual sleep about the mole that I had at that party.
Yes,
I've had mole and it's great. I've had some very good mole, but that mole.
I feel that. I
I
feel that.
I would wars could be waged to eat that particular mole. It was so good. It
Yes.
was so good.
Mm,
So, what do you make for someone that you love to tell them that you love them through food?
yes. Um, I am happiest and most content when I am in my kitchen, covered in flour, with a rolling pin in my hand, Beyonce in the background, and I am rolling out a pie crust or I'm making biscuits. It is it is just the one of, if I'm not in my husband's arms, that is my happiest place.
Okay, so I
And
have a question about biscuits because my
yes,
dad's side of the family is from West Virginia. Appalachia loves a biscuit, and sausage gravy
yes.
biscuits are a love language in the paternal side of my family. How do
Hmm.
you cut your biscuits?
I cut them square because I don't want to waste any biscuit.
Okay, see, now, well, I thought we were friends, but I
I
didn't hear you
know.
say a water glass. So
Okay, so when I am cutting them round, I don't need a fancy biscuit cutter. But I cut them in a rectangle and I just cut them square, and that way I don't have any scraps left.
I would have my great grandmother, and she would take her water glass, and it
Yes.
would just be, but you can't twist it. Do not
Oh, of
twist
course
it.
not.
It'll cut off the sides. It has
Yes.
to be pressed and picked up, and that's
Yes.
it. Yeah,
That's how my grandma did it too.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Since we're talking about food, I need to know, like,
yeah.
what's your favorite thing to eat and make, because you said you like to cook.
I do like to cook, and people tend to be surprised whenever I share food on my socials because I'm not like a food creator or something, but I'm a foodie in real life. Oh gosh, let's see. Like for last year for my because I always make my own birthday cake because I'm the only person in my family that can. It's like last year I made a pavlova for my birthday.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it was okay. It was fine. I would do it again. It kind of sunk a little bit as it cooled. It didn't stay
Mm-hmm.
nice and fluffy.
Mm-hmm.
It was still delicious, but it wasn't big. But it was also my first one. There was and I'm gonna forget her name. She was on British Bake Off, and now Nadia, I want to say Nadia Bakes, maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. I follow.
yeah. Okay. So she did. My husband does not like cakes. My husband's very picky, which kind of was one of the reasons why what I get to cook is kind of limited because he's very, very picky.
Uh-huh.
Um, but that does mean that I have gotten very good at Mexican food. Like, other than his mother, I'm the only other one allowed in the family to like make salsa, to make rice, to make
Mm-hmm.
like some of those like staple things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he does not like cakes. He only likes pies. But I did find a cake, and it was from Nadia that he loved, and it was this um, chocolate caramel flan cake where you take a bundt pan and you put the let's see, you put the caramel, like you make caramel, obviously, put it
Mm-hmm.
in the bottom of the bundt, and then you put the chocolate cake mix
Mm-hmm.
above that, and then above that you put flan. But then as it bakes, the flan goes through the cake and becomes the top of the bundt
Stop
with
it.
a caramel crystallized thing on
Yes.
top, and it crystallizes over like it goes over, it bakes into the flan on the top, and then the cake rises up through and it becomes the base of the bundt. And that thing, that would be that would be a last day kind of meal. That
Yeah.
was, I could eat that with a spoon, and if anybody tried to take a bite, I would commit crimes. I would commit crimes. But I
That's
do also love the staples. Like we did, my aunt's pumpkin pie. I can throw that together in a heartbeat. My great
mm-hmm.
grandmother's pecan pie. My husband loves that.
Mm-hmm.
He loves pretty much all pies. But yeah, I mean, I guess the way to everybody's heart is baking. So I really like to bake because everybody who turns down a baked good.
I
I can
know.
get really creative with food, and you can
Yes.
you can be a little bit messier when you're
Right.
cooking, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to be a little bit more scientific when you're baking.
Yes.
But man, do people just love a good cookie. People just love a
Because
good
cookies
piece of
are
pie.
nostalgic
Oh my
and
god.
delicious. Yeah.
Yeah, I really want a love crumble cookie, but they put too much icing on their cookies for
Crumble
me.
cookies is a good,
I do love a big soft cookie, but I
yeah,
don't. They
they're a
when they
little
ice it,
underbaked.
it is it not just soft but it's underbaked? Okay. I've been trying to figure out because I'd never had one, but they opened one close to me. And
Yeah,
I had them and I was like, I can't tell if this is just soft or if
no, it's
this is not
underbaked.
done.
It's
Yeah.
definitely not done. Yeah.
Yeah. Tanorria Askew, thank you so much for being here. It has been such a pleasure and an honor to get to be in conversation with you. If folks would love to get more of you, where can they find you online?
Yeah.
What kind of books do you have for them? How did they get the
Yes.
Tanorria Askew experience?
I am at Tanorria's Table everywhere. Website, all of my socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. My podcast is Black Girls Eating everywhere, except for Twitter, it's BGE Pod. But everywhere you can listen to podcasts. The website for Black Girls Eating is Black Girls Eating as well. And to support me, you can go to my website, sign up for the Anti-Racist Journey course. Also, the food side of my life, I have a cookbook called Staples Plus 5. It's a year and a half old. I still can't believe that my face is on bookstore shelves everywhere. It's wild.
I'm gonna have to go get a copy.
I'm sending you one. Of course.
Is it is the sweet potato pie in there? Is the collard greens? Is all of that in there? What's in there from
There
the meal?
is a sweet potato pie bar in there. The collard green is not.
We can have sweet potato pie bars.
Yeah, you can with like a shortbread crust.
Cool. No.
Yes, you can.
Get it into my veins now. Are there marshmallows? Is this like a sweet potato casserole kind of thing? Like are there marshmallows and stuff,
The
or is
marshmallows
it
are optional. The marshmallow
okay?
is optional.
I have. I guarantee you, I have all of these ingredients in my pantry right now. I
That's the
can't
whole
wait.
concept of the book is thinking about the staples you have in your pantry all the time. How can you make food from that? And then maybe up to five additional ingredients like your perishables, your produce. But I want people to make the most of their pantries and not feel like you have to break the bank to make really good food.
I'm so excited. See, I've talked to a couple other chefs on the show. I talked to Nick Alcaraz. He's the guy behind Practical Peculiarities. He also had a fun interaction with your buddy from MasterChef.
Yes.
Yeah. But I couldn't make those things. I'm not crafty enough, and I don't have those skills. But I can make that food. I'm excited to make that. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure.
You are delightful.